the SEAL teams encourage guys to lead. We want to build a group of leaders. So there were plenty of opportunities to lead at a lower. It's amazing to me, the most passionate Americans who believe in this country, truly the depth of what this country was founded on in the American dream. They're not the people that are born here anymore. He looks like a Jedi or something, man. He's all hooded up and he's not saying a word. And I'm escorting him back to his room, and I'm like ready to burst. I want to ask all these questions to him, like, what was this like? What was this like? Why'd you quit? You know, all these things. And I finally got him to his door, and he goes into his room. He's getting ready to shut the door, and I like stopped him. I'm like, hey man, like, what's it like? And I'll never forget. It's super vulgar. So if you're offended, you know, turn off your podcast. But he goes, bro, it was so cold. I would have.
I appreciate you coming on our podcast. Again, this is Jason Redman. I mean, I could list off all your medals, but former Navy SEAL, business owner, real estate investor. You know, it's kind of just started out. I always ask this person these questions, like, what is your why? You feel like you've done everything. What is your why, and why do you do what you do? Big question.
I would say my why is probably twofold. One, you know, it's funny, for all the positive things you can read about people, when you read someone's resume, all you ever see is the successes. But for everybody out there, there's usually some level of failure. For some people, it's big. For some people, it's small. For me, it was big. It was rock bottom, gun in mouth, ready to take my life failure. And coming out of that, I grew up a lot. And I learned a lot about myself. And I see a lot of individuals out there who probably had some of the same arrogance that I had, that I think probably isn't necessary. I think arrogance sometimes comes out of insecurity. It comes out of ignorance, comes out of a lot of things. But there's a lot of people that have failed and accepted that failure was it, that they'd never move forward. So they just kind of stopped living. And I didn't. I rebounded out of my failure, and I grew so much from it. So one part of my why is I want to help others be better, to let them know it's never too late. You can come back from failure. You can come back from the problems, whatever you've had in your life, whatever setback, you know, you have the ability to drive forward. And I've created a whole bunch of tools in my own life that have been able to do that. And number two, you only get one life. I want to make an impact in this life. I want people to look at me. I want my kids to look at me, my wife, my friends, my family, and say, wow, that guy has left a positive impact on the world around him. And I think I don't want to just, I don't know, I don't want to go blindly through this life, man. You get one shot, and I hope that I leave a positive impact behind.
So, what impacts? Like, let's say you pass away like 80 years from now, what would you want to be remembered for?
That guy made me better.
There you go. I like that. So how's your why changed from like just starting out in the SEALs? Like, I feel like when you're really young, you're trying to like find yourself. Did you know who you were and what you were about when you were really young before you got in, or like?
No, when I was young, I just wanted to be a warrior. Although what was interesting is I didn't really understand what that meant. And Hollywood probably doesn't do the best job of painting this idea of a warrior. You know, you know, I don't know, some people think that John Wick is it, or Jason Bourne is it, or, you know, G.I. Joe is it, or whatever. And I probably bought into those things when I was younger. But I honestly think that a warrior is someone who has the ability to fight for what they believe in, but also to be able to recognize that fighting isn't always the answer. I've often said in special operations at the highest level, we can train individuals. $10 million, you know, I think is the average cost to train a SEAL to the highest level. And most guys are trained to be lethal, to be able to kill with, you know, various firearms and weapons and explosives and all these things. So there are a lot of situations you get into where, you could easily kill someone, but it's actually the decision not to do that that probably carries so much more weight. The impact of, well, how do we negotiate through this, or how do we navigate around this, or how do we avoid this? Because that's a very impactful decision if you were to kill someone, as opposed to how can we work around this in other ways. And that's probably a really, I don't know, simplified answer to a very complicated scenario, but I think that applies a lot to life. And so when you talk about a warrior, your ability to understand how to drive forward and engage and potentially destroy things, but bigger than that, how do you build things? Like the simple answer is, I could just blow this up and not deal with this, but instead, how do we compromise and build and bring people together?
So what was what was the first instance that you learned that in the SEALs? Was it through like training, or like what was some of the moments that taught you that perspective?
No, I mean, later after I failed as a young leader, I was pretty blinded by my own arrogance younger, even as I was smart enough to excel and smart enough to get recommended for ranks, but I frequently burned bridges of being very task focused and not necessarily very people focused. And I think there's a balance. I mean, I am by nature a more task focused individual. Like, I have to be very intentional of opening the aperture to make sure I'm taking care of people. And now that's a little more second nature. I recognize hey man, that's part of being a good leader. But when I was younger, I didn't. It was just, so I frequently would burn bridges with people. So I would say it came later as I became a young leader and I began to be a little more self-aware. I began to realize you're not as great as you think you are. The ability, there is a balance. There is a time to be very task focused or mission focused, and there's a time to be people focused. And you got to blend those together. There are a lot of people who are way too people focused, so they never get anything done. And then there are people that are incredibly task focused and they just torch bridges everywhere. But sometimes those people are incredible. I just finished reading Elon Musk's book, and you talk about a dude that is insanely task focused, but look at the things he's done. But he has just scorched the earth with people to get things done. And so I do think there's a good balance there. And I began to realize that as I grew as a leader and I had failures and was called out.
So what was like, let's say, take me through like SEAL training just in general. Like what would, because for instance, like I wanted to be a SEAL for a long, that was my like goal until I blew out my knee and I could know that was no longer an option. But one of the reasons I wanted to do it was I wanted the SEALs, because I didn't know who I was. I wanted the SEALs to break me down and build me back up. So take me into like their training, like how they do that. Or is that not the case?
No, that's definitely the case. I mean, they break everybody down, but they break you down. They take everybody to their breaking point, but it doesn't necessarily change who you are. Your strengths and weaknesses are still going to be there. You're going to carry those through. Now it's going to amplify your strengths and it'll probably minimize your weaknesses some, but your personality quirks are still going to be there. You're forced to operate as a team. You have to. I mean, it's the essence of the SEAL teams and everything we do. And you'll hurt yourself like I did if you're more focused on yourself and you're not thinking about how do I blend in with the team. But during training, they break everybody down and push you over your breaking point. And different people's breaking points at different levels. But what's unique about SEAL training is training so varied. You may be really good at, you may just be physically strong. So you may be really good at, I don't know, carrying the boat and log PT, and you could do that all day without batting an eye. But maybe you're a terrible runner. So when you do runs,
not a great swimmer, actually.
Yeah, so everybody will encounter something during SEAL training. Everybody's going to have strengths and everybody's going to have weaknesses, and the instructors will push on that. They will find your weakness and they will lean into it and they will put pressure on you until you break. And it is in that breaking point that you have to cross that bridge where, okay, I failed, I'm broken. So either option A is this is uncomfortable and I hate it and I don't like it and I'm going to quit, which most people do, or you push through and figure out, okay, I've got to get better at this, or I've got to be able to endure this pain to get to the other side. And I think everybody in training encounters that at some point. Sometimes it happens before Hell Week. Typically, almost everybody encounters it during Hell Week.
So you mentioned you're all about the overcome mindset. During training, did you ever have that thoughts of like, hey, I might ring that bell? Did that ever?
Sure. And I have buddies that are like, I never thought about quitting. I don't know. I think they're liars. I think everybody contemplates it at some point. I mean, training is brutally hard. You're freezing cold. You're coated in sand. You're wet. Your lack of sleep. I mean, by Wednesday or Thursday, you're hallucinating. I mean, so you're just not in your normal mind. So I think I don't know if I believe anybody that says they didn't at least think about it. The difference is you don't. In life, we all have thoughts. I mean, people will probably think I'm a psychopath, but frequently I meet people that are like, yeah, I really don't like you. I could kill you. But I don't act on that. I don't do that, So, it's our actions in this life. We think about all kinds of things that you don't act on. That's what makes us who we are. And that's what ends up making SEALs SEALs. So for me in training, it was, I remember Thursday night was my hardest night. And
during Hell Week?
Yeah, during Hell Week. And I remember I several times thought about quitting that night, but I kept reminding myself like, hey man, if you quit, that's it. This journey's over. Like you will not be a SEAL. So I think self-talk is a powerful thing, both negatively and positively, and you're going to have both in this life. And but you've got to be very careful about the negative self-talk, because it'll lead you to quitting or stopping doing things, and you got to fight back that negative self-talk with positive self-talk, and that's what I had to do.
I've heard people say it could have been that it was like, hey, tell yourself, hey, just make it to Wednesday, or just make it to Wednesday.
Yeah, that's something they tell all guys. Well, they had told, I was the one that somebody had told me, make it to Wednesday. But what they actually tell you, that wasn't really good advice. Because the problem was it's still hard after Wednesday. So what they actually tell you, and this is really how you should live your life, is when you're going through hard times, make it to just the end of whatever you're doing. Don't look further down the road. I mean, for Hell Week, they tell you definitely don't look to Friday. You'll never make it. And the evolution you're in, like just be intentional about, I'm in this evolution and my goal is to finish it. I'm not even going to think about the next evolution. I'm not going to think about anything else. All I'm going to think about is finishing this evolution. And what I frequently tell young guys I've met who are going through any training, Ranger School, SEAL, Air Force, Combat Controller, whatever it is, never quit in the moment. Like if you're thinking about quitting, finish the evolution. No matter what, finish the evolution. And if you get to the end of the evolution where you have a little bit of a mental and physical reprieve, if you still want to quit then go quit. But 90% of the time, it's just a moment of emotional weakness that you're hurting and you're in pain and you're uncomfortable and your brain's telling you to quit just because it's trying to give you a break. And 90% of the time, people won't quit once they get through that to the other side. They get to the end of the evolution. So life's a lot like that. It's human nature that we want to reduce stress and discomfort and all these things. So people will quit when it's hard and then they regret it because they didn't really want to quit. They just wanted to reduce the discomfort. But if you can get to the end of it, just make it to the end of whatever it is you're going through. take a breath, and then, okay, what's the next thing I need to do to drive through? And man, that is what built an overcome mindset.
You know, I was listening to one of your podcasts, and you asked the guy this before you joined, and what he said about the freezing cold water, and I lost it. So my wife was sitting there. I was listening to this podcast, and how he described. Can you tell that story? I think that is the funniest thing. I lost it, and my wife was like, "What is wrong with you?"
Yeah, pretty vulgar. But yeah, when I was I hadn't gone through Hell Week yet. So the way training works is typically there's pre-training, there's first phase, which encompasses Hell Week, and first phase is designed to weed guys out. It's designed to apply as much physical, mental, emotional pressure and get guys to quit. The majority of guys quit then, Hell Week being part of first phase. Pre-training, when you come into pre-training, what happens is you're learning everything about learning all the aspects of SEAL training. You learn how to use the boats and how to run the O course and where everything is. And it's about a month. Typically, the pre-training guys will support Hell Week for the class that's ahead of them. So you provide all the backside support for Hell Week. So I was in pre-training and got assigned. I went through Hell Week with class 200. I got assigned to support class 199, the class ahead of us. And I remember anytime anybody quits during Hell Week, they have to be escorted back to their room, because depending on what time it is, I mean, you're pretty messed up, from lack of sleep and the arduous conditions. So anyways, I remember this kid quit, and I got assigned to escort him back to his room. And we had these wool Navy blankets that a lot of people in the Navy will remember, maybe in boot camp they remember. And this kid's like wrapped up in a blanket, and he wasn't real big. I mean, I'm not a big guy, and he was shorter than I was. And he's all wrapped up in this blanket. He looks like a Jedi or something, man. He's all hooded up, and he's not saying a word. And I'm escorting him back to his room, and I'm like ready to burst. I want to ask all these questions to him, like, what was this like? What was this like? Why'd you quit? All these things. And I finally got him to his door, and he goes into his room. He's getting ready to shut the door, and I like stopped him. I'm like, hey man, like, what's it like? And I'll never forget. It's super vulgar. So if you're offended, turn off your podcast. But he goes, bro, it was so cold. I would have sucked a big fat dick just so the hot jizz would have hit me in the face so I could be warm for a second. Then he slammed the door in my face. And I was like, oh my God, what did I get myself into? Like, I could not believe he said that to me. Like,
so what was your thoughts? They're like, oh wow, like
that's cold, bro. Like, I don't know. I was like, I didn't even know what to think. I was so stunned. I was like, like, what do you say to that? So no, I walked away. I told my buddy, I was like, I'm not sure about this.
You joked about that when you were like, you were all freezing cold or something. That was late in the mood a little bit.
Yeah. I don't think my sense of humor had fully developed yet, the black sense of humor. So you definitely start to get the dark sense of humor in the military. So yeah, but that was hilarious. Which is not what we wrote in my book. We changed it, but yeah, the reality came out. I think Jocko asked me, what did he really say? And that's where it came out.
I got you. So you just came to the teams. What was your first task of you being a leader? Like, what your first example of that you had to lead elite warriors? So that had to be kind of like nerve-wracking. Were you nervous or kind of like?
No, I think I always leaned towards leadership a little bit, but young and immature though. The SEAL teams encourage guys to lead. We want to build a group of leaders. So there were plenty of opportunities to lead at a lower level. I started moving up. I mean, some of it was more of I would say some of it was more management in the beginning, managing equipment and things like that. Probably the first level of leadership occurred for me when I became a training instructor at our team. So learning to instruct and provide value through the instruction of the different things we were doing, where I was teaching communications and survival and marksmanship and reconnaissance training. And it was there that I got recommended for a commissioning program from one of our training officer recommended me for that. So probably stepping into the ROTC, I had learned a lot about leading, both good and bad, and that's the thing. I mean, leadership is oftentimes people ask, hey man, are leaders born or are leaders made? And I think leaders are made, although there are certain personality traits that make some people better leaders than others. But no matter what, leaders are built through experience. So leadership is learned. So the more experiences you put yourself into to be a leader, the better you're going to become. And I think that started happening over time. For me, I failed as a leader because I let ego and arrogance get in the way. And there are a lot of leaders out there who that's been their death toll also.
Because when you went into ROTC, that's when like 9/11 happened and everything like that, correct?
Right.
And then the war on terror and all that stuff.
Yeah. So I was in school when all that happened. So the SEAL teams went off to war, without us that were in school. But I went back to the team, and my old commanding officer said, hey, this is a war that's going to go on for a long time. Go back, finish your degree, and there'll be time. And he was right. But I came back and, what is leadership? I mean, leadership is the ability to guide others to accomplish something bigger together. That's probably one definition of leadership you could look at. And in the SEAL teams, it was taking a group of strong leaders. I mean, all these guys in their own right, type A personalities, but to guide them together to accomplish, something great. In this case, it was, combat operations. So learning how to manage that, learning how to manage egos, learning how to, push back where you needed to, and, this isn't as important. So, I guess there's a difference if, you are a leader that sees yourself as a dictator, you always have to be right. And you're going to force your will on people, even, micromanaging the shit out of them when it's not really necessary. I think good leaders recognize the push and pull, what is the end state we're trying to accomplish? If you're going to accomplish it this way, even if it's not the way I do it, if it still gets us to where we're going, and it's not some crazy, ridiculous, massive bout of inefficiency. Or a good leader may recognize, this is massively inefficient, but guess what? The whole team's going to learn that this is inefficient, and they're going to grow from it. They're actually going to get better. And I think that's also a good mark of a leader, understanding where you need to let your people grow by failing.
Yeah.
If it doesn't negatively impact, the organization or the team, a lot of leaders won't allow that. They'll, oh, hell no. So they'll step in and they'll micromanage. And I did some of that in the beginning also, but.
So I know you're religious also. I get my definition of leadership as like what Jesus did, because Jesus came down here to serve. He didn't focus on himself. He was like serve, 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 and that's kind of where I fall. Where I think that's where like true leadership is. It's just don't worry about yourself. How do I serve and help others?
Yeah,
it's kind of like what I've come to realize what I think leadership is.
And I think, helping others to grow is a big thing in leadership.
So, like I've listened to a lot of your stories a couple times. A lot of people just see Navy SEAL, Purple Heart, all this stuff. Like this guy's probably never failed. And something I really loved about your story and kind of like surprised me was your story was just about overcoming failure. Can you bring us to kind of what I think you would say would be your biggest like shame, failure, whatever you would call it?
Yeah. No, I got commissioned as a SEAL officer in May of 2004, and I really had excelled. I had excelled in the several final years as a young SEAL enlisted, ranked very high. Um, Obviously got commissioned. I had excelled as I went through my ROTC program at ODU, and then came back as SEAL officer. And I think when you see a lot of success, it's sometimes you start to get a big head.
Yeah, I can
And
see it.
I got a big head. I got arrogant and just kind of thought I knew everything, and came back to the SEAL teams. And some of this was a little bit of immaturity. Um,
How old were you at the time?
I mean, I was 30, so I
Okay.
wasn't super young, but I was still a little bit immature on my leadership journey. Um, and Yeah, just came back, and I wanted to be a leader when it was time to be a leader, but I also wanted to party and burn it down when I decided it wasn't time to be a leader. But the flaw in that thinking is you're always a leader. Once you become a leader, whether you're a parent, whether you run a business, whether you run a team, you're a leader. And, no matter what you're doing, whether you're on duty or off duty, uh, you're still the leader. And people are going to look to you as the leader. If you're shopping in Walmart and someone who works for you is there with his wife, he doesn't go, "Hey, this is Tyler. He's my buddy." They go, "Hey, honey, this is Tyler. He's my boss," or "I work with
Yeah.
Tyler," whatever it is. And that was something that I wasn't. Everything you do as a leader, um,
Playing that line between boss and friend.
yeah, which is something I didn't do as well also. And I now tell people, as a leader, everybody says, "Oh, I want to be friends with the boss." And there's some level of truth to that. But the reality is, if you had, people would rather choose somebody that's a great leader, and maybe they're hard on them and maybe they drive them, but people would much rather be part of a winning, successful team than a weak,
Yeah.
broken team where they're friends with the boss. We all want to be part of success. We all want to win, and I'd much rather have anyone would. I don't care who you are. No one out there is going to say, "Oh, I'd rather be on the losing team and be friends with the boss than be on a winning team, and hey, he pushes us a little hard." So I always tell people, if you're going to, it's great to be friends with the people you work with and the people you lead, but if you're going to err on one side or the other, err on the leadership side.
I got you. Yes, because I remember you telling the story about that your one mistake when you were uh where you got decommissioned and got sent to Ranger School. How like you were going to go in that valley and wasn't the right call. Can you explain that for people and why? Like what your state of mind and through that aspect of it was?
Yeah, so we were in Afghanistan conducting operations in the southern province, the Helmand province, and we were kind of we were sweeping through a valley that had heavy Taliban activity, and we had locked the valley down. We held high ground on each side of the valley, and there was kind of a T intersection, and I led a team on the right side of the valley, or right side ridgeline up above the valley. Then I had snipers, machine gunner, and rocket crew, and um, came into contact with the enemy throughout the day. Towards the end of the day, things had gotten quiet, and we were planning on extracting. Everybody was going to reconsolidate. Helicopters were going to come in and pick us up, and that was going to be the end of that mission. Well, as that occurred, as we were reconsolidating, the guys in the valley floor came into a firefight with the enemy. I made the decision unilaterally to take myself and a machine gunner down into the valley to try and link up with the guys in the gunfight below. It was a bad decision for a number of reasons that I won't get into. you can read about it in my book, The Trident. But it wasn't a good decision for several reasons. Number one, the senior enlisted guy was my senior chief on the ground, and he and I did not get along well. And he told me, that's a bad decision. And it was ego and our personality conflict that really drove me to say, screw you, I'm making this decision. So that was one bad call, allowing ego and, don't let your personal feelings ever get in the way of professional decision making. If you're a good leader, you're going to say, I don't care. We may dislike each other. We may not agree with each other, but what's best for the mission or the outcome or whatever we're doing in business. And the other thing, it was driven by ego. I wanted to get in the fight, which is very dangerous for a young military leader.
Yeah.
There is a balance between getting in the fight. I mean, I think if you're a warrior, there's a side of you that says, hey, I want to get in the fight. I want to see if all the things I've learned work. But there is a time and place, and you got to balance that and say, is this the right time and place to engage? And in this case, it wasn't. There was a lot of parameters that, if I had taken a step back and thought more through it, it would have been like, this is a bad call.
Yeah.
And it was a bad call. So those were the two reasons it was a bad call. I did take myself and the machine gunner down into the valley. And we are super lucky that we were not engaged by the enemy or shot or killed or anything like that it didn't lead us to being engaged, which created more problems for the guys on the ground. It did create a delay in air support because now we were down in the valley, they were down in the valley, they didn't exactly know where we were, which air support has to know where all our friendly troops are so we don't blow up our own friendly troops. So it created delays, which finally, once I got back up on communications with our leadership, they were like, get your ass out of the valley. And by the time I got back to the top, man, that had pretty much damaged my professional reputation and my credibility as a leader with that bad decision. And it probably wouldn't have been so bad if I had owned it and said, hey, you're, man, terrible call. But I didn't. I fought back and was like, hey, I made the right call. Screw you guys for saying I made a bad call. And I think it was at that point that the leadership and even my own teammates were like, that guy's dangerous. He's going to get somebody killed. Get rid of him. So yeah, there was kind of a push to kick me out.
Because that's like a lot of what goes on in this world. We all, like, everyone seems to have like this victim mindset kind of thing, where it's like, oh, it's someone else. And I have some people in my family that's just like, we can never take responsibility. Even I was when I was young, or well, I'm still kind of young, but taking responsibility for your own actions, not someone else's fault. It's my fault. And how did you come to realization, like, hey, it's all on me. It's on me. It's not anyone else. It's on me.
It didn't happen overnight. And thankfully, it's always interesting to me, this story. God works in mysterious ways. Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that my commanding officer, there were a lot of guys, including my senior enlisted, my chief, wanted me gone. And I think there were a lot of people that agreed with him. They wanted to see me kicked out. And thankfully, my commanding officer saw potential in me and decided to keep me. We had lost guys. For those of you that have seen the movie Lone Survivor, that was my deployment. So we lost a bunch of guys on that deployment. I'm sure my commanding officer, the last thing he wanted to be dealing with is this young knucklehead idiot ensign making a bad call on a mission. But thankfully, he chose to keep me against the wishes of quite a few guys on the team. And I'd love to tell you right after that, it was like this epiphany moment where I was like, man, I'm really screwed up. It wasn't the case. I kind of walked away, still bitter and still having that victim mindset. Like, hey, these guys don't like me and this is just a personal vendetta and all this crap. One of the, you can call it punishment, you can call it leadership rehabilitation moments, was they sent me to U.S. Army Ranger School. And it really was at Ranger School a rock bottom moment that finally kind of started me to wake up was I failed the Ranger School land navigation course. Not because the course is hard, but it's not that hard. I mean, I taught land navigation. So I failed it because of ego. I failed it because I screwed around for the first couple of hours in the darkness and just said, you know what, I'm not going to go running through the woods in the dark, without night vision or anything like this. I'll just wait for the sun to come up, and I'm good enough that I can knock out this entire course in the daylight hours. And I didn't. I didn't have enough time. So I failed. I got into a verbal argument with the Ranger instructors and pretty much quit. I told them, screw off. And they were like, you're quitting? And I was like, yes. Never quit anything in my life. It led me to have to go see the Ranger Colonel. I realized what an idiot I was. And thankfully, once again, God moment, the Ranger Colonel happened to be friends with one of the more respected SEAL leaders in our community, a guy that had been my old commanding officer and a mentor of mine. And the Ranger Colonel got him on the phone, and he really kind of talked some sense into me. It made me wake up. And the Ranger Colonel wouldn't allow me back into my class, but instead rolled me back a class. So I spent a month in Ranger School. I think they call it the Gulag. I called it Ranger School Jail. But basically, for a month, under my own accord, I managed to put myself in a position where I got to even more humbled by walking around Fort Benning picking up trash. And it gave me a lot of time to reflect, and I needed it. I needed that time to reflect and really look at myself and realize, you're not this great leader that you think you are. Marginal. You have moments of greatness. And this was further reinforced by another Ranger instructor later in the course. We kind of got into this discussion. But for many of us, we have moments of greatness, and then we end up doing idiotic things. So how do you balance those? For SEAL leadership, or any organization, you may have someone that's a total rock star, but if they have these erratic moments where they do these crazy things, can you really trust them to be a leader or trust them to run your organization or team? And that's really what I had done. I'm sure the SEAL teams were kind of like, yeah, can we trust this guy? So it made me finally realize that, hey man, you want to blame everybody else for being here, but there's only one person that put you here, and that's this guy.
I feel like a lot of us, even especially me, I feel like I look back on all the big issues that I had in my life. A lot of them were I was down about. A lot of them were self-inflicted. I was my own
worst enemy.
Yeah, my own worst enemy. So going back to knowing what you know now, what would really get you out of that state of that mind of punishing yourself?
Well, number one, first and foremost, Jocko does a great job, extreme ownership. So own it, recognize, and I talk about this in my book, Overcome. I interviewed Jocko for that book. At the end of the day, you are in control of your destiny. Yes, there are things beyond your control, but you make the decisions on what you're going to do day in and day out. You create the discipline, you create the structure or lack thereof. You create the goals and go after those goals or lack thereof. You can make excuses about everything in this life. You can blame everybody around you, but at the end of the day, your ability to lead yourself controls what you're going to do and where you're going to go. So what does that mean? You own it. You can make every excuse in the world, and sometimes life is just not fair. You could be perfect and it doesn't go according to plan. But even that, I would say, okay, well, recognize that sometimes life doesn't go according to plan. So what are you going to do with that? You're going to lay there and feel sorry for yourself and be a victim, or are you going to get up and drive forward? So I would say for anybody out there, have grace, have grace. None of us are perfect. No one. There's only one perfect guy that ever walked this planet, and it ain't any of us right now.
Yeah.
So have grace, recognize you're going to make mistakes. And even if it's a gigantic mistake, that there are people out there that hate you, so what? Drive forward. You don't have to be that guy or gal that you were when that happened, accept that I'm going to be different. I'm going to be better. I'm going to grow from that. That's what I did. There's a small group of guys in the SEAL teams that still hate my guts. Okay, I can't change them. Yeah. But I know that I am better. I know that I am trying to do my best to make a difference and an impact and help other people out there. And I look now back at that time. Um, it's part of my journey. That failure was part of my journey, and I don't ever try and sugarcoat it. I mean, I talk about it all across the country. I mean, I wrote about it in my book. I speak about it on stage. I don't ever try and hide from it. I say this is part of who I am, and I think owning it is powerful. Because everybody in this life makes mistakes, and you may try and say nobody's going to understand or nobody will be able to, everybody's going to look down on me. And you're right. There will be some people that look down on you because we live in a very judgmental society. But I'll tell you this, there are more people that'll respect you for owning it and be able to relate to it, because guess what? We're all human and we've all made mistakes. And by talking about it, it's going to make you better, and it might make others better.
Yeah. Even myself, I literally just try to focus on, hey, how do I just get a little bit better every day? And extreme ownership, it's all on me. So what could I have done differently? And if it's out of your control, it's out of your control. So just transitioning from your business, from not your business, from the Navy SEALs getting out, how was that? Like, how was that like hard? Like, I know you had your I guess your war battle, that all that stuff. We can get into that or not get into that. It's up to you. But that transitioning out of, like, how was that transition?
It was different. For one thing, I think one of the biggest things that a lot of guys from the special operations community and the SEAL community, you take for granted how amazing the people you work with are. For me, I grew up my entire adult life in the SEAL community. I mean, I came in when I was 17 when I joined the Navy in high school. I was 18, 19 when I went through BUDS. So a kid. And I grew up in this world, less than, to date, I think there's only about 12,000 guys who have ever worn the trident.
Wow.
And and amazing. I mean, most of these individuals could do anything. Highly intelligent, super driven, physical studs, great leaders. I mean, all of them. And you take for even a guy that you're like, oh man, that guy's, a turd. Probably me. I was that guy. Even that is better than many people out in the civilian world who don't want to do anything, who want to live this victim mindset, who are perfectly content to do the lowest level. So when I transitioned out, I kind of took for granted. I kind of thought, man, everybody I'm going to hire is going to be like back in the SEAL teams. And I tried to run things like we were back in a platoon, and it just didn't work. So I began to realize, you got to give people a lot more guidance, and you got to give people a lot more structure and instruction, a little more grace. You got to figure out where people are at. How does this person learn versus this person? What motivates this person versus that person? In the SEAL teams, for the most part, you can tell someone, hey, I want you to go do this. And that's all you have to say. And even if they don't even know how to do it, I remember in my first platoon, I had our LPO tell me to go do something like that. And I was like, I have no idea how to do this. And he was like, go figure it out. In the civilian world, it doesn't always work that way. I mean, unfortunately, we got to provide that structure and, help people. And when you find someone who is like, okay, I'll go figure it out. I mean, those are the people who will take your company to the next level. Those are the top 10 percenters out in the civilian world. So learning that was interesting and kind of a journey to figure that out. There's a very strong brotherhood and camaraderie within the military, and especially within the SEAL teams. And that's something that you kind of have to build within your own company. And those were all things that I had to learn as I made that transition.
Was it hard? Because I know, like, for me, like, I got hurt playing football, so I lost what I loved to do. Was it hard realizing that you can't do what you love to do anymore?
Yeah, but it happened over time. I mean, for some guys, it's really abrupt. For me, I was wounded, and really, it was almost a 4-year. Well, not almost. It was a 4-year journey of surgeries and getting put back together. After about 2 years, I I thought that I could get back operational, and I tried hard to do that. I tried to find all these different surgeons who could get me. My arm only bends so far, and I needed to get more flexion in my arm to be able to operate again. And I traveled the country trying to find surgeons that could do that, but ultimately figured out that, hey, you're not going to be able to do that anymore. Which was tough. I mean, there were some things in my career that I had wanted to accomplish that I didn't. But I also recognized I'd had a pretty amazing career. I think for any SEAL, I think for any warrior, whether SEAL or any part of the military, if you are in a frontline combat unit, infantry, special operations, ranger, whatever it is, I think you want to be in combat. It's part of who we are. It's what you train to. We often used to talk about it. It'd be like being a football player and training to the level that you're recognized as an NFL equivalent team, but you're never allowed to play in a real game,
Yeah, I got you.
So, and that's the same with combat. So for me, I'd had an amazing career. I did 2 combat deployments, one incredibly intense, very successful combat deployment. So even though I didn't finish on my terms, I had had a good career. And I did get to finish on my terms because I told the SEAL teams, I said, hey, I came in to do 20 years. I want to stay until I get to 20 years after I was wounded. And they allowed me to do that. So I got to do some more great stuff in my career after I was wounded before I finally retired.
So you've been all over the world, seen all these things. What's your perspective of everything going on in the world in America right now?
We're broken, and a very strange place. What's troubling to me is the majority of America. I travel everywhere. We're much more in the middle. Whether you're right or left, most people come together in the middle. I would say everywhere I go, it seems to me like 80% of the country is in the middle. And then you have the fringe. You have the fringe far right and you have the fringe far left. But that seems to be the gigantic booming voice you hear on both sides. And it's just created this weird problems that we're having. The woke culture is dangerous. I disagree with it 100%. Personally,
it's confusing.
Well, yeah, and it's pushing for things that don't benefit the long term, in my opinion. People should be in leadership positions because they have the ability to do that job, not because of the color of their skin, because of their gender persuasion, any of those things. It should merely be based on, do you have the ability to do this? And we're going down this path where it's like, hey, no, we need to put somebody in this position because of those things, because of these specific demographics. And that's creating issues. In the military, that did not occur. Yes, I get it for all you out there that want to say, well, there's discrimination. Yes, there is. There are people that are racist. And unfortunately, there are people who, I don't know, don't like gay people. But for the most part, most people, all they care about is, do you have the ability to do the job? And if we put you in this position, you should be qualified to do that job. That's why this woke mindset is dangerous. And equally dangerous is this idea of, oh, if you don't buy into this, we're going to do everything we can to cancel you and erase you and not allow your voice to be out there. And that's dangerous too, because this country was founded on this idea of free speech. We should be able to have dissenting opinions. So now going down this woke path, you've got corporate organizations on the social media path that are choosing what is going to get out there. What information is allowed to be out there, and that's dangerous too. I mean, at the end of the day, whether you're right or wrong, a free society is based on people to be able to share their opinions, and all of this is creating a weird thing. We're creating a victim mindset. So, if the world doesn't go according to the way you want it, it's because you're a victim. It's because someone is discriminating against you, which may or may not be true, but
They
guess
want
what?
handouts too.
Yeah, and yeah, you're entitled to success because of XYZ. Well, no, you're not, man. Go out and earn it. I mean, throughout this society. And people want to say, well, America's this terrible place. No one has advanced further, I mean, than this country in enabling success. And people want to say, well, there's discrimination, there's racism. Yeah, but um, for every individual that you want to try and say, or demographic that you want to try and say, oh, well, they're not allowed to, you know, because they're black, they're not able to move up in this world. There are millions of insanely successful Black Americans. There are millions of insanely successful gay Americans. There are all these people that have been successful and only here in this country that you don't see in other places. Yet we keep pushing down this path where, oh no, we've got to go deeper and we've got to just allow people to do this even though they're not qualified to do it. Well, eventually we're going to reach a point where there's nobody that's able actually to get things done because they don't have the qualifications. We're just promoting them or putting them in positions based on demographics, not on capability.
I think everything like chess, and I feel like we're way easier to manipulate when we're angry. Because all the blood rush goes away from your head into your hands and your feet, and you don't really think everything through. So if you're really mad and you're running around angry, you're not really seeing what's really truly happened. And it's kind of, I mean, it's scary, sad. And I have this conversation with my wife all the time. It's like, is it really this bad, or is the small few just that loud? I hope it's that.
I think it's that.
So,
although it's amazing to me that for all the talented, incredible people we have, that I just feel like our political system is totally broke and we can't put forth candidates who really represent the middle advanced true representation of the United States of America.
Yeah, well, I mean, I feel like it's almost hard too, because it's like it costs so much money to truly run, and the only way you could trust that person's not bought is that person has to have money, that they don't need it.
Yeah.
So, because half the people you vote may not even be the ones that control everything.
Right.
So it's just like this puppet show, and it's just super confusing. I know a lot of people are frustrated, including myself. But
me too.
It's just a weird world we live in. Take me through.
But it's still better than so many other places in the world. That's what people don't get. We are so much better than so many of the places around the world that I've been. And if you don't believe that, why do you think so many people want to come here? You know? And if you talk to it's amazing to me, the most passionate Americans who believe in this country, truly the depth of what this country was founded on in the American dream, they're not the people that are born here anymore. It's the people who came here from hard places and became naturalized citizens. You know, it's amazing to me.
So what's some country, or you know, say less countries, what's some examples? Because even for like myself, like they may have never been out of the country, and other than like vacation on like a beach somewhere, so they don't have any like perspective of what life is like outside the country. So are you able to share some light of what it is like outside from all your experience?
I mean, their poverty in some of the other places in the world compared to here. I mean, don't get me wrong, we have poverty here, but it's not the same as some of the slums. Like, I mean, if you go to India and I have not seen the slums in India, but I know I've talked to people that have. I've seen some of the slums in Peru and Colombia where people are living in literally pieces of wood that are fashioned together on a dirt floor.
You also see the perspective of like if you go to like, let's say you go to like Belize, I've been to Belize, you just take from your airport to the resort, you can just see the poverty all the way up until you get to the resort. So you see like that kind of perspective too.
Yeah. And what happens is a lot of the people there are in some of these countries, depending on where you are, their people don't have the ability to get out of that. There's a narrative, you know, that's painted that, hey, if you're this race, creed, color, demographic, you don't have the ability to get out of the area you're in. But that's just not true, because there are so many. It may be harder. Don't get me wrong. It may be harder for you to break out of that. But there are millions of people here that have come out of the worst, poor, bad demographics in our country that have achieved high levels of success because they were willing to break out of it. They somehow figured out a way to break out of it because we do have freedom and opportunity in this country.
So what can America do differently that would like win maybe the perspective and hearts of like some of the people that think America's so bad?
Man, I wish I had the answer to that. Yeah. I mean,
can.
I continue to try and encourage people that, it comes back to you, I think so many people, and that's part of the problem. The narrative that's being painted is someone else needs to come save you. You need the government to save you. We need these programs to save you. It's not fair that, that Elon Musk is such a wealthy individual, which
He's changing the world.
he's massively changing the world, and there's value in that, and he's employing, hundreds of thousands of people across this world and advancing things. And really in business, that's what it's, that enables those things. Yet there's this idea that that's just not fair. And if they achieve this high level of success, it should be given to others. And I don't agree with that. I mean, if you create something of value, then there's a level of reward in this world that we live in.
I think if we changed like people understand, because we mentioned earlier, talk about budgeting and finance. If people understood, like a lot of people believe that Elon Musk has $200 billion just sitting in the bank, that he can just like, oh, he's got $200 billion. Why don't he distribute that between everyone? And well, it's not like that because it's equity in the company that we value his company that much. And I feel like that's a big issue because it's like, oh, why don't you just give away all the money? I was like, well, he doesn't have that money. It's like an equity. It's not the same thing.
Yeah.
Of like net worth. A lot of people don't know how to calculate what your net worth is. But just to jump into the business aspect of it, what was your first like transition from Navy outside? Like what was your first endeavor like that? Whether you got motivational speaking first, like what was your?
Yeah, it was both. I mean, I had a nonprofit, so I learned a lot about business running a nonprofit. Man, running a nonprofit is really hard.
I bet.
The massive level of transparency that you have to have, combined with you're constantly trying to raise money. Like I think running a for-profit business is so much easier because you have a product and either people perceive that there's value in your product and they buy it. And, obviously it's marketing, sales, and all these other things. But at the end of the day, whatever product you have, on one side for me, it's my speaking and coaching and books. So people say, I see value in what he's saying, so I'm going to hire him. With a nonprofit, you're constantly trying to convince people that your mission is worthwhile for them to invest in or give money to, or, so, but I learned a lot about that. I mean, man, cash flow was the hugest thing. I mean,
Yeah.
Projecting out, how do I keep, there were so many months in our business where I was like, man, I don't know how we're going to be, in 3 months, we're going to be out of business. So that was a great lesson that I learned because I am the king of cash flow in our businesses. I'm constantly projecting ahead so that I can predict, okay, we need to do something now so that 3 or 4 months down the road, we're not in trouble. So I learned a lot about that. Speaking, I learned, how do I market myself? How do I create a brand? How do I create a strategy? How do I price myself? How do I sell my books? How do I create a business? How do I manage taxes? How do I do all these different things? How do I create a website? How do I get that website out there? And I'll be honest, I think I'm even still a slow learner. I mean, we're just now reaching a point in our business. A lot of stuff we did on our own, we probably could have accelerated faster, hiring people sooner. But there's that balance between, man, do I hire and I'm taking on this massive additional expense, or can I still continue to do it at a pretty good level? And we did it at a pretty good level for a long time. But recently, as we're growing, it's like, hey, man, like if we want to go to really the highest level, we're now really starting to hire people. Like we hired a pretty expensive marketing company, Reframe Your Brand. But I tell you what, so far they've been amazing.
So what was your biggest lesson you learned from like building a company from like basically from the ground up, which is extremely tough to do.
I learned that I don't want to run a nonprofit anymore. I learned that, yeah, it's really hard. And I learned, and a lot of people talk about this, you know, so we were a grassroots nonprofit that evolved to a medium-sized nonprofit. We were doing over $1 million in donations a year, which, you know, got pretty big. I mean, I had 11 employees. We had an army of volunteers. So I learned a lot about that. I also learned as organizations evolve, we tried to change the focus of the mission, and there were some people who did not like that. They liked the original model, and I think organizations are going to go through that. So I learned that lesson, that I probably, if I had to go back and do it again, I would have had to let those people go because they weren't buying into the new direction where we needed to go, the 2.0 version. They wanted to hang on to the 1.0 version. That's going to happen. It's going to happen in business. A lot of businesses talk about this as you level up. And it's a balance. I mean, when you're a small business, you have this great family, everybody knows each other. And as you grow, you may lose some of that. So how do you maintain that balance? You know, that's something we're trying to do in our business as we grow.
So how do you know? It's probably the hardest thing to do is to figure out who's the right partner. What do you look for in a partner? What do you look for in partner employees and stuff like that? So what do you really look for when you're trying to evaluate, hey, can I grow a business with this person? Because it's almost like a marriage.
So interesting. We went down we went down the road in a business. We created a speakers network, or bureau really, and we had a bunch of different speakers that got involved, and we thought this was going to be a great idea. All these speakers were like, yeah, we have all these speaking engagements we've done, and we said, okay, we're all going to put our engagements together, all our contacts together, and you know, we're able to leverage your contacts for this guy, and you know, we're all able to benefit from this. But the problem was, nobody was really doing that. So what ended up happening is my wife and I ended up carrying that business. So that was a big lesson learned. I mean, so when you're looking for a partner, not everybody has to contribute the same things. Different people bring different strengths to a business, but whatever their strengths is, they definitely need to be contributing to it, because you don't want to break a business down into shares of equity if they're not contributing, because it's only going to create resentment, and you're not going to be looking at, hey, we created this great business. It's going to get stalled by, you're just angry at the partner you have that's not doing anything, but that's getting a cut of the pie. So I think that's really important.
So is what you do now is like, and I drive my partners crazy. This, I put everything out in writing. We have like from start to finish, like you want to know where everything's going, what the roles are, everything. I always live by that. Is that kind of how like you transition to like, hey, let's put it all on paper? Because then if it's on paper, like, I mean, everyone agrees, knows what to expect.
I am 100%. I learned that lesson the hard way. I got involved in a lawsuit in our nonprofit, and there were a lot of reasons it happened, but a big reason it happened is we didn't put it down on paper. It was several friends that came together for a project. When the project grew and was doing well, there were disagreements, and that devolved into a lawsuit. But because we didn't have an agreement to be able to say, this is what we all agreed upon at the beginning, it turned into a he said versus she said, and I never agreed to this. And, you know, so that was a big lesson to me. So I, at a minimum, memorandums of agreement where we write everything down. If money's exchanging hands, or we're bringing you on board, or whatever it is, 100%. And that's probably one of the biggest things. I frequently, and I see this a lot in the veteran space, you know, I'll do something, and I'll be like, hey, you know, here's a memorandum of agreement for this. And they're like, no, man, handshake's all we need, man. We're, you know, man of word, you know, handshake's all. And I'm like, listen, man, this protects you as much as it protects me. It makes both of us agree this is what we're doing. And if there's ever a disagreement, we're able to go back and say, hey, you know, so I'm all about a handshake, but let's do it with a piece of paper and a signature too.
Yeah. So I went to this business conference in Vegas, and this billionaire was speaking, and he said, everyone that does that, he always tells me, he said, I trust you, but I don't trust your wife's lawyer. And he said that's his reason, his go-to. And he said that line has made me so many billions of dollars, because, I mean, you could die, and then I'm fighting your wife's attorney or your kid's attorney.
Yep.
And then what? And he said that's how he says and does everything. Just put it on paper, and that's his reason. So I was like, that's genius.
Yep.
It's that one line.
And then for one of the things I was just talking to my wife about this the other day, that as our business is growing, I never say this. I don't have employees. I have team members.
I like that.
Like, and I don't want, if I bring you on to our team and I ask you to do this job and you always do it to the minimal level, you're an employee. If you're a team member, you're looking at, how do I make this better? And I don't expect you to solve the problems of the world, but at least for you to look at it from the lens of every week, like, hey, could I make this process a little better? What could I do to make, the area that I have influence or impact on, how can I make that a little better? That's a team member. That's a teammate. Like, everybody's working together to make the organization better. And that's what I want. And that's what I'm trying to hire for, and to tell them that, like, hey, if all you're looking for is you want to come in and punch the clock, like, I don't want that. I want, we have a great organization. I mean, I'm able to get out and speak. This new business we're opening here in Chesapeake, it's to enable other businesses to have a place to come and do their business so they can be better. So we want to be able to provide a great environment, a great place that they can grow and thrive. So it's all about, we're all working together to do that. So
how do you inspire your employees to, like, almost believe in your core value, believe in your mission statement? How do you inspire them to?
So we have quarterly meetings. So we use a operating system in our business called EOS, Entrepreneur Operating System.
The traction model, yeah.
Yep. So every quarter we put down our goals, we lay them out, and we talk about the duties and responsibilities of everyone. Annual meetings is with our staff to sit down and go over, hey, where are you at? And are you happy with where you are? Do you still feel like you're, in the best place? Or, is there someplace else in the business you're like, I'd really like to go over here? And if that's the case, why do you think you'd be good there? And okay, if that's the case, can I provide you some training? Can I send you to go get some training where it would make you better in this area? So those are things that we're doing in our business, and constantly, we have our weekly in EOS. They're called level 10 meetings.
Yeah. Great book if anyone wants to.
Yeah. I computer has an operating system. Your business should have an operating system, and EOS is a template for that. You can look it up online, but that's what we use in our businesses.
So what are your businesses? I know you mentioned a couple of them. I mentioned you're invested in the Patriot Seltzer. What other companies do you have?
So we have a short-term rental company called Red West Holdings, based out of West Virginia, where we have 5 ski condos up in Snowshoe, and we're continuing to look for and buy more. We just launched. We purchased a commercial building here in Chesapeake and Great Bridge that we're renovating, called Riverview Center. So that'll be a new co-working executive office space, podcast studios. So individuals looking to do podcast or event center.
So that's a unique, what really inspired you to do that?
So I read the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and it changed my outlook on everything. How
should be mandatory in schools.
Oh my God. I'm an idiot. Like, I didn't know anything about money. Came from, we definitely did not have much money when I was a kid. I mean, we'd probably be classified as poor. I was never taught about money.
Yeah.
I never really learned about money much when I was in the military. I mean, I made decent money, but we did not reinvest it or anything like that. We just kind of lived. And so it wasn't until I started getting out of the military and I was running a nonprofit that I started really trying to understand money and all these different things. But it was only when I read that book that turn your liabilities into assets.
There you go.
And that changed my outlook. Like, man, that's how wealthy people get wealthier. Like, they buy stuff, But, you know, they look at it, and was the first thing that I thought about. I was like, gosh, man, every single year I go skiing in Snowshoe, West Virginia, and I drop $5,000 or $6,000 to ski for an entire week and rent out a ski condo for a week with my kids. I'm like, and all I'm doing is paying somebody else. I'm like, I should buy my own, and somebody else is paying me. Turn your liabilities into assets. And that changed my mindset on everything. So you asked that question. We needed a new office. I was fortunate enough, we were renting space from the hospital, and but they are turning the office that we were in into a medical facility. So we knew in 2023 we needed to find a new office space. And we knew what we were looking for, but I also wanted something that turn your liabilities into assets. I wanted something that I could rent out. So when we found the building, which is right behind Big Woody's here in Chesapeake, it was huge. It was way big. I mean, it's almost a 14,000 square foot building. It's way bigger than what we needed. But as soon as I walked through, I'm a speaker. I do events. I have a podcast, or I had a podcast and we're going to launch a new podcast. I need meeting space. I need all these things, but I was like, well, I don't need them all the time. So instead, I was like, you know what? You know, this could be a great opportunity. You know, I could have an event center that I do my events in. Now I'm saving money on that. But lots of people need a place to have events. Podcasts, everybody is growing and interested in podcasts. So yes, I need a podcast studio, but I only need it for maybe an hour or two a week. You know, why not hire a producer and create a package where people can come in and one-stop shop for podcasts? And we'll upload it. We'll provide the reels. We'll provide everything you need, and we'll show you how to start your own podcast.
Yeah, it's definitely, because very time consuming.
Yes. And relatively, you know, it's either incredibly time consuming or it can be expensive if you're paying someone else to produce and all that stuff. So we looked at what were the opportunities for things that we needed that everybody else out there needed too. And that's how it all came to be.
Okay. Wow. And you must be killing on the snowshoe rentals. I know a couple of people that have snowshoe rentals up there.
During the winter.
Winter it's like hit, and then not as great in the summertime, but
the winter can carry you. And for us, I mean, you know, snowshoe rentals are a long-term goal for us in one way. And this is the other thing, being smart, you know, how you manage your taxes. I mean, that's is smart.
Yeah.
I was doing very well in speaking. I did almost 100 events last year. So, and I did, almost 100 the year prior. So my profit margin was really high. So we were going to pay a lot of taxes. So I said, man, I need to figure out some ways to try and reduce our tax liability some. So we started looking at, you know, our rentals. And even if I'm taking somewhat of a loss, that's helping to offset things and reduce tax liability.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's being strategic and smart in your thinking.
Bonus depreciation is amazing.
Yeah. And for us, I mean, we look at long term. So 10 years from now, I want to pay them down. We have small mortgages on all of them, but we'll time it to where when I finally retire, they're paid off. So now it reverses, and I'm not bringing in revenue from our other businesses, but now that'll become a bigger revenue source without the mortgages for the expense.
So you got the speaking, you got the all the real estate plays. Why get into the alcohol business?
One, I like their model. So they reached out to me. I had not thought about that. It wasn't a road that I was going to go down. But when they reached out to me, these two young entrepreneurs who had gone to JMU together, and they said, hey, we have this idea to create this whiskey seltzer. There aren't a lot of whiskey seltzers out there. Most of the seltzers are vodka or gin based or something else. And they said, we have this idea to create this product that is very patriotic and really kind of targets men more, and it's tasty. And we also want to give back with this product. We want to recognize what they call proud patriots. So we want to recognize a military member, fire, law enforcement, and someone from the medical community. We'd like you to be our first military honoree. I said, and I looked at it and I said, well, show me more. Show me what all you guys want to do and how you want to do it. And I really liked their model. And I said, hey, once again, we had done well. So I said, what can I invest in? And I saw this as an opportunity. So I invested in the company and became a part owner. The seltzer industry is blowing up.
Oh yeah.
So I saw opportunity there with them, and we're hoping to do the same with this. So yeah, I mean, it's merely opportunity. I have a 10-year plan. My goal is I'm 48 right now, getting ready to turn 49. I would like to be totally financially free by 58, 59 years old.
So what is your like 10-year plan? Do you have a number? Like, hey, I want to hit this number. Like, what's your
Um,
you
sort
give
of.
roundabout. I know you have your rocks and your 5 and 10 year.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to have $1 million in I'd like to be yielding almost $1 million in revenue coming from all our investments by the time I'm
After tax.
after taxes.
After tax.
Yeah, so I'd like roughly $100,000 a month that I can do what I want with. And if I want to work, then I'll work. And if I don't want to work, then I won't work.
Okay.
But I don't want to have to worry about money.
Yeah, I completely understand that. That was like me and my wife's financial free number keeps going up the more kids we have because
Yeah.
daycare gets crazy. So then it's like, man, I don't know, we just need 10. Oh crap, now we need 15 because daycare is like $3,000 a month. I'm like, oh my goodness. So it's like it is really hard to like continue to get financially free. So what keeps you motivated and going that is possible? Because a lot of people that listen to us could be getting discouraged. Like, hey, like it's hard to pay the bills. It's hard to make it through.
It's hard to do it if you are stuck in one. You need to diversify your income streams. You're never going to make it on one thing, and especially if you're working for somebody else, create a side hustle. We live in one of the greatest times in the world. You know, you live in the age where anyone can create an income source, whether you decide to sell. My son went out to California for school, and he figured out that he could start buying auctions. He could buy closeout stuff. He bought like storage things. He bought like Home Depot will get stuff that's broken. He could buy that and he could resell some of that stuff. So he started reselling all this stuff. He made a killing.
Yeah.
He ended up over, and he did all this from while he was at school out in California. Now, granted, you know, we had a shipping, so there were some things that he benefited from with working with us. But I mean, by the time he got done from school, he bought an RV because he went to go work in Texas, and he bought a new F-150 truck. He paid cash for both of them.
There you go.
So in this day and age, it's pretty amazing. You're limited only by your creativity and what gig you can create for yourself. You know, you could go do Uber. I mean, yes, granted, you're burning more time, but you know, give up a little bit of Netflix, give up a little bit of time in the bar with your friends or whatever you're doing, and apply maybe an extra 10 hours a week to source some side hustle where you're driving some additional revenue. Because if all you're thinking is that, you know, the job that I'm in just isn't bringing in enough money, yet you're in this cycle where, okay, well, how do you generate more money in the job you're in if there's nothing you can do? I'd much rather have a side gig and a diversified income stream, because what if that one thing falls out? At least you have a little bit of a safety net from something else. And who knows, that something else could grow to a point where now you can get rid of that other job. Every
good real estate deal I ever had is I was solving someone else's problems. I feel like that's like a very key and very crucial in business. I said like, because it's very competitive to be the best marketing company, because there's people spend so much money on ads, it's money in aspect. So rather than me just focus on that, say, hey, how do I solve one problem? How do I make that product that goes alongside that? So getting into problem solving, what problems have you had to overcome and fix that's actually turned out to be pretty good for you?
I mean, I think probably the biggest one, I mean, when in coaching, it's for a lot of individuals that are out there who have failed, have gotten off course in their life, and they don't think, they're stuck and they can't drive forward. So, I mean, I'm living proof that
Yeah.
you have the ability. So definitely coaching people through that. That's what I speak on. That's what my books are about. So helping individuals to figure out that you have the power to create your own path.
Okay.
So many people don't believe that. They just accept that the world is what it is and that they're always going to be in this broken point or failure point, or they don't have the ability. And it's not true, man.
Yeah.
You control your destiny. If you want to drive forward, yes, it's going to take work, but it's a choice by you. And so many people don't fully understand that.
So how about because me and my wife's my number one business partner. So how is working with your spouse in business?
Amazing, but you got to have the right people. I meet people that are like, oh my God, I could never work with my wife. I'm fortunate enough that my wife and I are a great team in business. We're a great team in our marriage. So much so that we're coming out with a relationship book. Um, Knowledge and sharing your knowledge, there's value in that. So I am providing value to people through speaking, through the content that I put out, and through our books. In this case, we had so many people reach out to us and say, how have you guys stayed married through all the hard things you've been through? So we said, well, you know what, let's write a book. We wrote a book, and pitched it through the agent. And thankfully, HarperCollins said, we like this, let's purchase it. So coming back to a relationship, I am fortunate enough that my wife and I balance each other really well. And I think that makes it good for our business. We're both very driven. We're both goal setters. We have dreams on where we want to go, and we discuss that. And our business goals fall within those dreams. So both of us are working together towards that. There are challenges in it. I mean, there are times, and I'm sure you can
Yeah.
appreciate this. Sometimes I'm smoke check tired, and and I've just got back from like a multi-day trip, flying all over the place. And as soon as I get home, I get hit with, oh, this happened in the business, this happened in the business. I'm like, oh my God, I can't deal with this right now.
Yeah.
And there are other times where she's exhausted and we're climbing into bed, and I'm like, hey, what about this and what about that? And she's like, I don't want to talk about this right now.
So my wife's actually responsible for me getting into business completely because when we first got married, my wife used to love to show fixer uppers.
Yeah.
So we bought a house and she was like, "Oh, we gotta do this," and I used to work on the in the shipyard down in like the engine room, so I was super tired. I was like, man, I am not doing this. Like, as soon as I get out, and then I eventually read Rich Dad Poor Dad. I was like, man, she's gonna get us to do all this stuff. I'm gonna learn how to make money from it. So that's what we got in the real estate was from her. But what I was gonna get at is you mentioned the EOS traction model book. Did you do that same kind of business planning with your wife? Like, hey, here's your roles here. Like, not to say I'm like put everyone in the box, but it's like,
Yeah. I'm the visionary, and my wife is the integrator. And I, frequently huge ideas that aren't always the best. You know, I frequently will throw something at the wall that it's not a good idea, and thankfully she keeps me in check most of the time.
There you go.
So, and I think that's important, figuring that out in your business. What is the role of your spouse? What is your role? And you're working together. It's not, hey, hey, I'm the leader and it's your job to follow. It's a team. I think that's really critical to understand. If you're a husband and wife team out there, you're a team.
Yeah.
And um, granted, you're not always going to agree, but hopefully you're figuring out where to compromise and come together. That what's best for your business, your family, your finances, and recognizing that.
One thing I had to learn with marriage and business is it's kind of like one of my flaws is I have this crazy desire I have to win. So it's like sometimes when me and my wife get in an argument, I gotta realize like, hey, she's on my team. I'm not
Yes.
trying to win.
Yes.
It's like she's like, oh no, it's a good idea. I'm trying to get like push forward, like, oh, it's a good idea, it's a good idea. And I had to like step back and say, oh, we're a team, and like some things she is superior to me, like HR, SOP operations, that's what she's better at me at. So it's like I gotta take the back seat sometimes, and sometimes that's hard for like you mentioned, like men being ego and trying to lose your ego aspect is sometimes very difficult. So
That's a great point. We talk about that in our book that, yeah, and I'm this way too, and a desire to win, but you're torching your most important teammate in the process. So like, what are you doing, man? You're killing your own teammate. Like, so yeah, it is funny, but recognizing that. And some bosses do it within their own organization.
Yeah.
So it's not their spouse, but it's their staff. So yeah, how do you help? How do you help make your wife better, who's making you better, and hopefully who's making the rest of your team better?
So what about balance? Like, so for instance, me and my wife, literally every Sunday we go to a different coffee shop, and that's where we do like our business plan for the week and stuff like that. Do you have to find like a balance between, hey, when's business, when's personal, like between you and your wife? Because things get blended, and it's like just like you just like telling each other what to do all the time.
No, I don't think balance is not this perfect thing. I mean, it's not like, hey, 25, if my life is broken into 4 buckets, business and kids and, I don't know, fitness and whatever else. And 25% of my time is broken in those things. That doesn't work. It's not, the world doesn't work that way. So I would say balance is awareness. I write about this in my book, Overcome. It is being aware that these are all the buckets we have in our lives. I need to be a good dad, and I need to be a good husband, and I need to be a good business leader. And I also have to take care of myself physically, and I need to take care of our finances and grow our business. So all these things. So and sometimes there are going to be fires that force you to spend a lot of time in one area. But it doesn't mean that you're not aware of the other areas and that you need to still put some time and effort into that area, into those other areas. So for us, there are seasons. I mean, like this year, which was one of the whole reasons we bought these condos and snowshoes. So this is the longest vacation we've taken in years. We did 11 days up in snowshoe skiing.
There you go.
It was amazing. And we had my wife's family came in, my family, my kids. So it was awesome. I mean, the 5 condos, we didn't rent out any of them during that time. We just had our own friends and family and just had a blast. Awesome. So it was a good point to decompress and have family time and then come back and go after it, but also being intentional. Like I flew in the other night and I didn't get in until like 9, but I was like, why don't we go out to dinner when I land? And so just the 2 of us going out and being together and, having that time with each other. And I think that's the balance. We like what we do. We like building. So frequently we've tried to have nights where like, we're not going to talk about work at all, but it almost always will come back and they'll come up. So we don't, we don't like, I can't believe you brought that up. I mean, we just kind of go down that road and then bring it back to talk about other things.
Do you give like, cause it's like every quarter, let's say you hit your rocks for like, do you have something where you like, oh, let's go celebrate for this aspect, give like a reward aspect for completing your goals?
We probably could be better about that. Yeah. We were talking about that the other day. I have a tendency that not to stop and like I'm super driven. I'm always wanting to level up. So I'll hit goals and I'll just blast right through it and like, what's next? Yeah. So she's better than me at that.
Yeah, I agree. That's what mine is too. And one of the things, like getting back to Rich Dad Poor Dad, I hate spending money on anything that I cannot write off. Yeah, I can't write it off. It's really, really hard for me to spend money on anything because it bothers me. So I have to give all the money to taxes, and you got to do that. But what would be, because I get this question and I'm not really sure how to answer. What would be your best piece of advice for someone who wants to get their spouse on board, like business and aspect of that, like working, like if their goals are not aligned, like one cares and one doesn't care, like what would be your best piece of advice for them?
I mean, I would say, one of the biggest things that's driven my wife and I would encourage anybody else, is shared dreams. So throughout ever since the beginning of our marriage, it was shared dreams for things that we did together, things as a family. My wife's always been a natural entrepreneur. So it was things in her business. How could I support that? So, and even now in our business, it's shared dreams on, what is the end state of all
Yeah.
this? You know, I like helping people. I want to help people to be better, but there's also an end state of business. We're trying to, create value and create an end state that someday, our 10-year plan, that we don't have to work anymore if we don't want to. And with that comes, more time up at Snowshoe. We want to own a condo down in Florida. We want to, um, I'd love to own a ski condo out west someplace. So, there are other things that we want that are shared dreams that are kind of part of this journey. One of my biggest goals of financial freedom is when I was younger, we didn't do a whole lot of family vacations, not very often. We didn't have a whole lot of extra money. So my goal is I want to be able to take my kids and grandkids every year on a big vacation, and they don't have to pay a dime. All they have to do is just make time, know, hey, next year this is where we're going, block this time off, and dad's paying for it.
Kids are definitely for that one. Let's do
Yeah,
that.
well, I mean, family is big for me. I mean, I'm doing all of this for family, and I hope that I'm also creating some sort of legacy for my kids, that these condos will go to them, but I'm teaching them also about entrepreneurship. My son is an entrepreneur. My daughter is an entrepreneur. My youngest is in college right now, but
It definitely, like, from like the real estate aspect, it opens up the conversations of like, oh, this is why we do this. This is why you do this. This is how you write out this stuff. And my oldest is 3 years old, so I haven't gotten there.
yeah.
I got a long time, but that was one of the things that I wanted to do. I wanted to create a business and get my daughter to like do each one of the roles to learn the whole aspects of business, because I'm like was DIYing my way of learning about business and finances and all that stuff. So
Yeah, and that's what we've done. Our kids work in our business. My youngest daughter worked in our business for a while, and I thought it'd be perfect. I was like, teenage girl, help me with social media, and she did it for about 6 months, and she's like, she's very introverted, and she's like, Dad, I hate this.
yeah,
I was like, all right, you don't have to do it anymore, but it's you learn about things, and for us, it was good to have our kids included in our business and to learn. So, you'll also get to that point. And that's the other great thing with my wife, coming back full circle to get your spouse involved in your business. They understand both the challenges and the rewards. I mean, there's a lot of problems in running your own business and dealing with people and everything from unexpected expenses to supply chain problems to whatever, So, yeah, it's navigating all that stuff. And, thankfully, if your spouse is on board and aware, you're now shouldering those burdens together and also and also celebrating the successes together. I mean, I'll tell you right now, getting this building up and running is challenging. I mean, it has been 14, 16-hour days since we got back from our ski vacation. But also at the same time, it's like, wow, like we bought this, like you and I together did this, and we're now going to turn it into something bigger to help other people and, be something bigger for us down the road.
So just for the specifics of like that deal, we don't have to get into it, but what kind of loan would you have to get? You have to get like a DCR loan, or
We did a 504B small
okay.
business combo loan. So with the
Gotcha.
bank, it was great. Because it enabled us to, I mean, we had to put 10% down, which is still a lot of money. But thankfully, my speaking business had done well. We honestly didn't think we could pull it off in the beginning. We thought we were going to have to get some other friends and investors involved, but thankfully business was really good for us and we managed to pull it off. But, so yeah, that's what we did. So yeah, if anybody's out there and you're looking for commercial real estate, explore 504B loans because it'll allow you to do a 10% down.
Did you go with Town Bank?
No,
Who did you end up going with?
we went with Old Point.
Oh, Point. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just the only reason I say Town Bank is because that's who I knew. Someone else went through and they said
Okay.
it's fine.
Yeah.
But all right. Well, is there anything? What would be your best piece of advice for just someone starting out or like I mentioned before, some of my friends and family are going in the military. What would be your best piece of advice for them?
Do it.
Do it.
Do it. So many people, if you're young, if you're a young man out there or a young woman out there and you're listening to this and you're like, I've thought about going to the military, but I don't know, do it. Go into the military. You're going to learn so much about yourself. Even if you only do 4 years, you're going to have intangible skills. So many of the skills that I learned in the military, I'm using in business all the time. And if you're thinking about starting your own business, if you're in a job right now that you're like, I hate this job, like, why do I keep doing it? Leave, go do something else. Like, your sanity is worth more than struggling through every day. This life is too short. You're going to die. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but you better buy into the fact that no matter what, the only guarantee in this life is you're going to die. So why not go after your hopes and dreams? Even if you fail fast, get up, figure it out, and drive forward, at least so you don't get to the end of your life and look back on it and say, holy smokes, I wasted my life. And all those hopes and dreams I had that I always thought about that I never took action on, you'll never know if you could have been successful or not. I'd much rather have failed and look back and said, at least I tried, because the vast majority of people in this life will never try. They'll talk shit to you and tell you how you're doing it all wrong while they're not doing a thing to advance themselves forward. So do it.
I have a question. It's very interesting. Having almost a near death experience, did that give you a whole new perspective of live every day like it's your last, because you are not guaranteed tomorrow?
I call it living greatly.
Yeah.
I call it, go after it. You never know when you're going to die. That's the reality. Everybody acts like they have all this time. You don't know that. Like, a meteorite could hit this building and take us both out right now. We just don't know. So why not every day go after it? Stop worrying so much about failure. A lot of people were like, oh my God, are you scared to take on this, $3 million debt? No. I've not had money before. Yeah. And I've lived, I've slept on a rock in a hammock in the middle of the jungle. Like, if I have to, I can do that again. But so, and hopefully, we live in a crazy world. So hopefully I won't have to do that. Although I am teaching, that is the one additional thing, kind of a side project, hobby of mine, is teaching survival, defense, first aid, all those things that, God forbid, if the world ever collapsed, I'm hoping to teach other people how to have those skills. So we run our Overcome and Survive workshop multiple times a year. We have the next one coming up in April, and then we're going to do an advanced course in the summer, and then another basic course in November. So
what's how do you go into that? You just break it down just like you did, like, here's an EMT, here's the basics to survive like this, here's a tourniquet, here's all this stuff, like that kind of stuff?
Yep. Yeah, we teach basics. So survival, what should you have in your house, from the most basic stuff like, hey, man, if there's a major storm, I really recommend you have these things in your house, all the way to, the Ukraine example. If society was to collapse because we're about to be invaded, and you should blow out, you should get out of the cities, and what you should have with you to try and survive for a period of time for you and your family.
Like without power or a cell phone.
Absolutely.
So what would be your best safety measure against something like that? Like, what would you?
A plan and some training. Yep.
Do you have find a way to learn how to make water, not learn how to make water, but learn how to purify water and stuff?
100%. Yeah, we teach all that in the course. There's great water purifiers out there. Water is going to be your biggest challenge for most people. Food will be secondary. But water, you can only go 3 days without water. So, and the problem is, depending on where you're going, is the water polluted? So having a water purifier, I have multiple water purifiers in my go bags. I teach people how to use them in our course, and if you go through our course, I teach you how to make a short-term go bag and then a longer-term go bag, and give you a loadout list on how you can, here you go. Here's mine. Here's all the stuff in it. You can go buy all this stuff for you. So we teach all that. We teach firearms training. We teach, obviously, awareness. We teach some of the levels of the laws. We have full scenario-based training. We teach situational awareness. We teach de-escalation, which I think really important. There's a lot of places out there that all they're teaching is they're trying to teach you that you can be John Wick. You can't. I'm not John Wick. You never know. To de-escalate a situation is probably significantly smarter. Trying to either bring it down or totally avoid it is significantly smarter than trying to fight your way through it, because you have no idea what level of training, how many people that person may have. They may have an entire army of people around the corner.
One gun and you don't have anything.
Exactly. So it's much better to avoid situations. We talk about breaking contact. So those are all the things we teach in the course. It's been a lot of fun. We've run 4 of these now, so looking forward to running the next one in April.
All in Hampton Roads, or?
Yeah, we do it down in Moyock,
down
at the old Blackwater facility. So we do all our training down there, and so yeah, you can check it out at overcomeandsurvive.com.
Okay, that's one of my goals, is to have a large piece of land with water source. Utilities disappear.
Yeah,
but
have a place to go. We talk about that in the course. So
I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. I learned a lot, and looking forward to see what you do with that building.
Yeah, thanks, man. You have to come check it out. Yeah, we'll have our grand opening sometime this summer.
Oh, you have? So what would that look like? Are you gonna have like a Patriot Seltzer?
Absolutely. Heck yeah.
All right.
Yeah, we'll have Patriot Seltzer, and what other we want to partner with some of the local companies, such as Astro DJ, some of the catering companies. We've got to get the permitting done so that we can get the deck built out over the water. But once that's done, then we'll have our grand opening event.
If you ever need any of the food ones, since I've been in the coffee industry, I seem to know all the food companies.
Okay.
So if you ever need, just let me know.
Yeah, some food trucks to come would be awesome.
I got you.
All right.
It was a pleasure meeting you.
Yeah, thanks, man.